Well, welcome. Thank you for being here. Part of our continuing series where we talk to people around California, around anywhere, about where we are today and what can be done. With us today is Professor Ethan Evans. He's been here in California for quite a while. He teaches social work at the university level. He has a background in sociology and his undergraduate was in political science. He also does homeless research and has been part of some big homeless counts and homeless or unhoused efforts. And most important, he's able to preserve many different types of vegetables. So, all of those things are going to be on display today for our analyses. Professor, what more can you tell us about you in what I like to call our 1 to 2 minute elevator speech? You and I are in an elevator. You got a minute to introduce yourself. What would you say?
Sure. Thanks for having me here. It's nice to meet together like this.
Yeah.
Some highlights. There's some European experience. I've spent time in Germany as an exchange student und spreche Deutsch. I've done some of that homeless work in Germany, so I've got an international perspective on how not only homeless services, but broader social welfare and how nations seek to take care of their people and how they value them in things like constitutions. So I've done some review of comparative, constitutional analysis for social welfare. And I love being a Sacramentan, to be honest. It's been a good home for 26 years. I've passed the threshold that any country would, or that our country would have to claim residency and California stature. And again, glad to talk to you about things developing here.
Well, we had met, and I told you, you and I had met the same way. They met with J.J. Ames, the political director, where just kind of called out of the blue and said, "Hey, I see what's going on." So, just for everybody to follow along who's watching, you generally, I mean, I don't agree with everything California does, but generally you like it here. Generally, you like the values here, and you have been not totally feeling warm and fuzzy about the way that America's been going the last couple of years. Is that a fair summary before we get into some gory details?
Yeah, that's a fair statement. And I've also been subject to the views and perspectives of others. And so not only have I traveled back and forth from Germany and been an American there, but also I traveled back and forth from my home state and then town of Erie, Pennsylvania, and have dear friends and family. And so I get to see California and our nation from different perspectives. I feel how values and the way life is in California is different than other places in this country. And and so I have been watching with concern.
Again, we got a lot of stuff to cover. Really want to show off your gray matter to the public, but what is the view of California from Pennsylvania? What is the view from Europe, please? For someone who doesn't know, imagine somebody doesn't. I've lived in California and I've never watched TV. I don't even know, like, what do they think of us in Middle America and in Europe?
Well, I can tell you what's something that's changed over time, especially in Pennsylvania. It used to be, oh, California, the lands of nuts and fruits, right? And so just sort of a comical, free society, hippie, pot smoking idea of what California is, movie stars, of course. And so the Pennsylvanian look often is LA and the 60s. It used to be the primary joke when I would talk with folks that go back and hang out with people, and then when I'd meet someone new, they say, "Oh, you live in California?" And that has changed drastically, because now what people ask me about is whether or not Antifa is running the streets out here, and how horrible it must be when, living in such an unlawful place. And that has been a big change. I mean, it's a very different concern that people raise. And I say, well, you got to understand, California has everything, number one, be that landscape or climate, but it also socially has everything. And so, when folks get siloed into what Fox News is telling them, California becomes a place where there's danger, and that danger, is masked. And then in Germany, what I've always enjoyed is that when I'm in Germany, I've learned to say, I'm from California.
Yes. I was wondering if you were going to do that.
Yeah. I mean, the eyes light up. You're like, oh, California. Oh, well, my nephew's been there, and we did the Yosemite. I call it the Deutsche Runde, which is like the German circle, because so many folks there with their 6 weeks of state-provided vacation come to California and travel Yosemite, LA, San Francisco, and so they're just joyed. And when I say I'm from Pennsylvania, they sort of say, oh, okay, that's nice. Yeah. They just don't know other parts of the country like they know California in their dreams, if not in their own experience.
And when you say I'm from California, you get a different reaction than when you say I'm from Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then the other thing is, as an American, and that gets a mixed response. It doesn't matter if it's California or Pennsylvania. California, I just get the eyes to light up. But I've had over the years, I've had some pretty intense conversations. Germans kind of love to hate America. We have helped them. We have a close relationship. Where I spend a lot of time near Stuttgart, everybody has a story of the the older adults have stories of the soldier who gave them bubble gum and after the Second World War. So there's this love thing, but then they look at our national politics and the roller coaster that we take the world on, and that conversation turns serious pretty quick. And some folks are willing to believe that not everybody is what they see on the news or from our national figures. And some people aren't willing to let that slide in individual conversations.
So it used to be in America, hey, California, oh, they're kind of silly and wacky and weird and strange, but it's kind of, harmless, fun way. I saw some movie from the 1980s where this guy is a space alien in the movie, and he's on a date with this human woman. I like weird sci-fi. So they get into a taxi cab, and the taxi cab driver, it's a space alien. Taxi cab driver turns back and he goes, oh, from California. And then he just goes on. That's the joke. He's literally, but it was, oh, you're so bizarre. You're not like one of us. You must be a space alien, showing the cultural difference, but totally harmless. He laughed off, turned his back to the guy and kept driving. There was no, oh, space alien, oh my God, you must be like that. And now I think what you're saying is it ain't funny anymore. And now I'm angry and mad and scared.
Yeah. Our difference has been vilified. I think that's very accurate.
The difference has been vilified. That's I may not have spelled that right. Vilified. Yeah. So, and we've interviewed a lot of people who have said, whenever I travel, I say I'm a Californian. I don't even say I'm an American. I'm not saying. I've met a lot of people who travel. Almost every Californian that I know that travels regularly does that. And they say it's very different reaction.
Yes.
So the American perspective of California has gone from funny, but you are strange and unlike me, but it's fine, to I'm now feeling threatened and endangered. And the European perspective of California is that it is a distinct place, and it's not like America, and they have kind of a different opinion of it. And their opinion of America at this moment is fear and concern. Is that a fair summary?
Yes. And I don't think they're as confused or what was it? I mean, with the first Trump election, there was really a like, how did this happen? But there was a willingness to say, well, we know that not everybody voted for this person.
Right.
And I'm actually headed to Germany in October or in December, and so I'm interested to see what it's like. I haven't been there since 2022, and so it's been a couple years. We've had an administration between. We'll see. And I did have friends who came and visited, and we didn't talk about it much. You know. And I just talked to I was an exchange student in Germany. I just talked to my host father yesterday to let him know I was coming. And he says, yeah, I worry about you guys quite a bit.
So, first time around, like California in the 1970s, Trump comes around. It's a fluke. It's a fluke. He's here, whatever. It'll go away. Second time he comes into office, oh, it's not funny anymore. It's real dangerous and real serious, and maybe not the level of hate or disgust that you see with Americans towards Californians right now, but concern, worry about the status of America and where it's going. Like this isn't funny anymore. This is real damn serious to them. The second time he got elected, first time he could write it off as a fluke. Second time Trump comes around, this is America.
Yeah.
Okay. We've been saying that. We famously have said that in 2016, we told everybody this is his country. Nobody wanted to hear that. Russia put him in. I remember one of the Black Eyed Peas was doing a halftime show on TV and goes, only a minority of this country backs this guy, right? And all the liberals I were with were like, yeah, that's right. And I'm like, they didn't want to hear it. And we kept saying, look, Hillary only won the popular vote by the margin in California.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know. So Erie, Pennsylvania, where I grew up, it's only since the 80s, it's only voted for not Democrat in the presidential election twice. And it's been for Trump both times. And the first election, I was back in Erie in September or October, and I saw handcrafted Trump signs. And I went, oh shit, like he's winning this. Because to the level of people actually making their own signs means this isn't just a political campaign. This is something else. And that was true. And what was frustrating here in California, to your point, was that folks couldn't see much different. They could only think, oh, well, it's because everybody's racist or, I know these are my friends and families. They were good union workers, but they've been out of a union job for the last 30 years. And so they've, from that economic standpoint, left behind standpoint, they've been waiting for a figure like Trump. And it wasn't on the race element. It was on we've been voting for policies that haven't come through because we were good union members. And Trump came by and said, look, your folks you haven't had a union job in 20 years. You see that? You're still hanging out at the bar voting for the Dems. And he won twice. And it was clear to see that there was a difference. And then I do think what was frustrating is that there is a disconnect for Californians based on our history of where we are, where people come from, and how we live out here, that it makes us hard to see things clearly for people in other parts of the country who have, different surrounding, different economic opportunity or not, or lack of opportunity.
Yeah, we had famously said, and just didn't get any traction in 2016 that this is Trump's America, that Hillary only won by the margin of California. If you pull California out, it does mean that a majority of Americans outside of California supported this man. Mm-hmm. And the mentality at the time was Russia put him in, not the American people. It was a foreign government, mm-hmm. and he does not represent America. Hell no, hell no, hell no. And then he managed to survive to 2020, and Biden barely beat him by 3 points or less, which in America, they had all over the TV about repudiation and et cetera. But I read Deutsche Welle, mm-hmm. and they had a very different headline in Europe than the one America had. The one mm-hmm. America had in 2020 was, yeah, see, we repudiated him. Biden, this is America. Look, mandate. In Germany and France and Europe, they saw what I saw. 2% ate repudiation. Who the hell are you feeding sausage to that's already rotten? And mm-hmm. it was amazed me because you couldn't see any of that in American media. All celebration. We did it. We're on the, and then in Europe, every single major European country is like, oh my God, they're going down. Oh my God. And none of that made it over here. None of it. But they saw it and they go, oh, you got a real problem. Now, Californians aren't even aware of that. Neither Americans. Yeah. And then you come down to this, the third time that he ran, and he's more popular than ever after committing an insurrection. Yeah. So the way that we put it was, this is the best time for CalExit, not to celebrate human misery, but to say, guys, we told you in 2016, you're attached to this country. Hell no. 2020. No. 2024. It's still here. It's still here. They didn't go away. They didn't change their mind. They didn't say, I'm sorry, and I'm going back into the hole. And I remember when Biden was running and he goes, there will be a calming of America and the Republicans will realize to repudiate Trump. He said that, and Democrats and liberals were buying it. Now, that was many years ago, 4 or 5, but that was on the table. Totally failed. Now, what does it say that it took, like, no, that's not me being punched. No, bro, I'm not being punched. Damn, 3 times in a row? I might actually be getting punched here. Why did it take 3 damn times for people in California to finally get it?
Well,
as a Californian who loves California, we love this place. Be honest.
Well, I think it's it's been what's happened since. We didn't get it at the time of the election either. You know, I don't think. I mean, we said, well, the damn Biden should have got out of the way sooner, and then Kamala Harris would have had longer time to campaign. And we didn't look at a flawed process. And so I do think one of the things that we have to grapple with if we're thinking about what does the future look like is that, you know, America has a institutional political system that was built in 1770, you know, and the Electoral College, the method through which California is sidelined in the presidential elections due to that system is very real. And I think back to 2004, it was the second Bush election. John Kerry, also a flawed candidate but not George Bush, was running. And because California is not a place where you can make a difference in the presidential election, I raised money from my friends to send me to Philadelphia so that I could knock on doors with an organization called Project Home and help organize Get Out the Vote of homeless and low-income people in Philadelphia to try to influence turnout in the Pennsylvania race, where presidential politics matter quite a bit, where electoral activity matters a bit. I mean, why did in this last election Elon Musk spend millions of dollars on organizers in Pennsylvania? Because it matters. and did not spend millions of dollars in California because it will not, it's a foregone conclusion, and one's activity here, you can write checks on the presidential side that can help nationally. You can do some, now that with all the technology, you can make phone calls in Nevada or some other state from your comfort of your home here in California. But where the rubber meets the road for presidential electoral politics is on the streets of, Dayton, Ohio, Philadelphia, and Florida to some degree, and these swing states. And otherwise, you can go to sleep in California, and will vote, overwhelmingly in one direction or another.
Thank you again for bringing up another Calexit talking point that I did not tell you to do, that California's input in presidential elections doesn't really matter. They've called them before they even count our votes, I think since Reagan. That goes through the Obama period. One of my favorite arguments is, well, you can't Calexit because you're abandoning all the liberals in America to this. And I told you, look, we got to save 40 million people here. That's how bad it is. But on top of it, it's, we can take as many people as we want, and everybody's welcome to come here. But on top of it, it's the fact that California did fight in 2016. I mean, the top people pushing back against Trump were from California. The most protests were in California. The most amount of money to resist and all that stuff was California. Mm-hmm. And then we were there in 2020, and then we were there in 2024, and we gave everything 3 times in a row, and it did nothing. Did nothing. So they're like, don't abandon us. And I'm like, well, us being on the team isn't doing anything. The guy basically got in 3 times in a row. If they admitted that the Hunter Biden laptop thing was kind of made up, he definitely would have won 2020. So what's the point? What's the point? We're here. We're putting in our full weight. We're giving everything we possibly can, and it matters for nothing. Thoughts, feelings?
Well, I think another place where that's important to kind of see is, and look at what, we've also given candidates. We've given people who rise to national prominence to try to be a figure for something. And one, that hasn't worked. And 2, look what they have to become to try to make themselves palatable in those elections. I mean, I think Kamala is a good example of that. I don't know. I'm not as familiar as I could be about her role in the state of California, but as a national figure, the sort of political gymnastics that she had to do through the primary weakened her capacity to be a strong candidate because of what would be expected to be competitive in those states where it matters. And so we could say, hey, we're a leader for the rest of the nation for values and such. But once a leader from our state gets into a position of national review, they've got to come back on those issues, or they've got to meld themselves into some form that can be palatable. And I don't think that serves either the rest of the country or Californians well, to have that type of, Play-Doh necessity for our political candidates.
Also, I always like to bring up that I heard from a Canadian. He goes, well, here's the thing. Why are Americans having a healthcare debate? This was before when Obama was running. And he goes, why did Obama even bring up a healthcare thing? Why did Bernie talk about it? Why did it even get to the point where the Dems were pushing it? Because a country with universal healthcare is right on your border and you can't not see it. So we are the example right in your face. And yeah, you can go, oh, we're Americans. We don't care what Canada does. Yeah, but we're right in your face and you constantly have to hear about our ideas. So if California was independent, how do you know that those progressive ideas wouldn't be pushed into America the same way? We're able to do all the progressive stuff that we want. There is no blockage from America. and we're right on the border of America. So then they'd actually see full-blown climate change policies, and they'd have to discuss it. Whereas right now, there are certain things we want to do, and because we're under the federal largesse, no one in America is going to do it, right? There's certain climate change policies nobody's going to pull off. Public banking policies, nobody's going to pull off. Gun rights policies or gun protection policy, gun safety policies, no one's going to pull off. If we were actually independent, we could do those things. We'd be right on the border. They'd have to look at us and go, oh, I guess you don't collapse into the ocean when you have climate change fully implemented, right? Before that, they can always block it and always say that.
Back to that German American thing, when I am in Germany, when the discussion of healthcare comes up, the question is simply, what the hell's wrong with you people? How is it not a right for people to have health insurance? How have you not organized? How is it okay for two people living on the same block with a 6-year-old? One of them's insured, one of them isn't. Both 6-year-olds hit each other on a bike, and one of those kids is injured and impaired for the rest of their life, and the other one goes to the hospital, has health insurance, and their family isn't burdened with healthcare costs. And there isn't an answer for that. I haven't thought to say, well, wait a minute. In California, we essentially do have healthcare for nearly all folks. That's been curtailed now, but we have the most expansive capacity for ensuring the most number of people who live here than most other states in the nation. Insurers have more than what federal, and at every turn where states are given flexibility, California push further rather than do the minimum.
Right. Okay, see, everybody's had a good intro to what's going on and who you are and where we're at. And let's just get into this a little bit. So I cartoon it a little bit. Things aren't good in America. There's a lot of political division. There seems to be a lot of anger from the left to the right, from the right to the left. California is seen as the epitome of the left, and therefore it is getting kind of a focal point of the anger. I mean, Donald Trump literally targets this state. We had the Palisades and Eaton fire. People were dead. And he said, I don't know if I want to help them because I'm not sure I like them. And then he sent combat trained Marines in on our population. And then he also threatened to arrest the governor. And then he had our first Latino senator thrown to the ground like a dog. Then the vice president joked about his name the next day, intentionally getting it wrong to show that he thought that was funny. Then they ordered the National Guard against the will of the people here. And then we're generally just badmouthed and trashed as horrible human beings on Fox. I'm in the Central Valley. I know a lot of people who watch Fox because it's still purple here, and it's all the time, always. We're nothing but welfare and mutilating children and undocumented people committing the worst crimes against everybody. Antifa running around wild, forests on fire. It's like Mad Max, kind of. And I'm like you. I'm like, yes, we have problems, but it's still a functional society. So this is a picture of the opposite of America. In fact, the Republican Party, the last year Trump was president of its first term, had their entire national convention on how California is the anti-America. So, and I asked historians, tell me the last time one of the national political parties made their entire platform about how we hate this one specific state. Name that other time in U.S. history that's ever happened. And they can't. And I go, So also this is my favorite one. I'm always amazed at the number of people that don't know this. Half of the Republican Party says that California is not really American. So, and anybody in here, you, me, we're not really American. That's half of all Republicans. By the way, that was last year. So that's not ancient history. That's only months ago. And I point out to people like, okay, so the Republicans said half of them think we're not really American. By the way, that includes California conservatives who are going to have a lighter opinion on that, which means if you pull the California margin out, over half of the Republicans in America outside of California do not view all of us here as American. That includes the conservatives. I would point out the Oroville Dam, when it collapsed, was in a very red county in California. There were tons of conservatives online, LA Times, San Francisco Chronicle had to cover this, who were saying death to you all. Conservatives outside of California didn't know that we have really hardcore red areas. And so they still said, screw everybody in Oroville, glad you're dying. And LA Times is like, this is weird because that's where all the Republicans are. So like you guys, because all of California is liberal, right? So that literally happened. I can find the article. And as I tell people, if someone doesn't view you as Americans, then why do you need disaster assistance? You're not fellow country people. And why can't we send foreign combat troops against you? You're not actually us, you're a foreigner. So why can't we arrest your governor? Why can't we treat your senators? You're not really Americans. We don't really need to help you. And we can send 29 Palm Trains combat troops to you. The kind of guys who go up against the Republican Guard or special forces out of China and North Korea. We'll send them to a domestic protest. And then we'll talk about how, we're going to target the place. Can you give me 1 second to get a cup of water?
Yeah, please.
Sorry, I got intense. Sorry, everybody. I got a little dehydrated last night. I stayed up late watching Halloween movies. It wasn't the greatest idea, but I'm a Mike Myers fan, so.
Oh, nice. I'm getting in the mood. I went to the Crocker Art Museum what do they call it? Spirits and Ghouls the other night, and it was amazing. A lot of people dressed up. I felt like it got me, and I'm ready for Halloween.
I love it. I love Halloween. Okay, now back to real terror. We covered how here we're not even Americans, so you don't get disaster assistance, and we'll send combat troops in on you, and we'll say that we hate you, and we'll talk about how you're out of control, and we're going to bring the full forces of the government to come down and get you, or this is war. This is why the Atlantic magazine, now that's the top policy magazine in America, the Atlantic magazine, very high level. If California is not getting disaster aid, but hostile deployment of troops, Californians might find it harder to see what's in it for them. That's the Atlantic magazine, the top policy magazine in America, for the first time ever in American history, saying publicly that CalExit might be a reasonable concept for Californians. They didn't say you should do it. What they're saying is, given the way California is being treated, there's the quote right there from David A. Graham, June 9th, 2025, top policy magazine. If we're being treated this way, what the hell's the point of being in this union? And now the top policy magazine basically said, yeah, that's not an unreasonable question. So this is my favorite article. Not a lot of people know it, just like they don't know about this one. But basically, guys, no one can argue with me anymore about CalExit. Oh, it's silly? Okay, top policy magazine in America basically is using CalExit talking points a month ago or 2 months ago. So I've been at this since 2011. It's 2025. That has never happened. Here we are. It's that bad. So it's not just Professor Ethan and Mark getting together. There's other people going, damn, wow, that's bad. Smart people. All right, now let's get into a little bit more mischief. I want to show you this. So Charlie Kirk passed away. Murder in politics is wrong and bad and wrong and bad. Always, it is destructive. It does not help. It's wrong and bad. At the same time, trying to be polite here, California's had a very different opinion about Charlie Kirk in general than Americans did. And when being told you need to be quiet, you can't say anything bad about this guy and kind of, just let him be harmonized as a saint, a lot of liberals and especially brown-skinned or dark-skinned minorities were not having it. They were like, let me play you a quote from what this guy said. And then you can tell me how I'm supposed to be cool as a black person hearing that black people aren't qualified to be pilots, or how as a woman, it's okay for this to happen, or how as a minority, it's okay for this to happen. And then you want to tell me if it's about free speech. I don't think it's free speech for you to tell me how it's okay for me to be a second-class citizen in whatever clever jingoistic fashion you figured out. Women especially also don't seem to be interested in California and hearing it. So we don't have a discussion, fine. But if the discussion is about how I suck and I'm not as good as you, no, I don't want to have that conversation. So apparently that attitude has pissed off some conservatives. This is my favorite thing. It wasn't even the Kirk death. It wasn't even him being killed. That should have been the moment. This poll came out 2 weeks after his death. This was not the day after. This was 2 weeks after. They're talking about the reaction. Conservatives said, this is a saint. You will say nothing bad. We will honor him. And yes, that is the traditional passage. You know, somebody passes away, you're quiet. But this guy was a political figure. He was bombastic. He intentionally said edgy things in order to be out there, and things he knew damn well were going to piss off other people, just like Trump did. And now it's like, well, you went around pissing off all these people, and now you want to act like, you know, we can't bring that up. No. So apparently that upset conservatives. They felt that he wasn't being honored or respected, and now they're disgusted with liberals. There were some liberals who laughed when Kirk died. I did not encourage that. I do understand it. I don't encourage it because I know it's destructive behavior. This doesn't go anywhere good. So as much as you may hate that guy, this is totally unproductive. Not helping anybody, okay? You're not helping. All right? Go home. Don't need your help. That being said, this is about the aftermath. So September 22nd to 27th, especially fraught moment 2 weeks after Kirk. We asked Democrats whether they think Republicans as the enemy or fellow Americans. And it turns out now 64% of the country says that it can't be saved. Basically, it's too far gone to pull it together. So they've never seen that before. By the way, this is another poll from that study. Polarization from 2023 has almost doubled in importance. In 2023, it was 7 points. In 2025, it was 13. So in about a year and a half, it doubled in importance. It's now more important than the state of democracy itself or how the Republican Party is turning into despotism. Think about that. It's more concerning than the failure of democracy in America and the Republican Party turning against norms. Now it's polarization. The only thing that's more important is inflation by 1 point, and the economy double in a year and a half is a huge jump. I know you know this, Professor, but I'm for everybody following along.
Of course.
And here you go, just for anybody that's going to, be a critique. All that's showing you is it's everybody shares the opinion. It's too divided to fix America. So men, women, 18 to 20, 45 to 60, 65 plus, white, black, Hispanic, degree, no degree, Midwest, South, West, Northeast, Democrat, Republican, Independent. It's all basically 65, 2/3%. If you look at the African-American community, it goes up to 80%. So basically the floor is about 2/3, 65% of every single demographic group you can say is like, it's too far gone. So that's not just one party or two. That's everybody from every background, how you see it. This has never happened before in American history, to my knowledge. This is the first time. So when people go, oh, well, we got through the 60s, we got through the Civil War. Okay, but a poll saying 2/3 of the country thinks you're not going to pull it together. And by the way, that's everyone in the country on both sides. That's never happened before. You should be shocked by 2 times the rise of polarization within a few months. Here's a few other surveys that came out at the same time for our Halloween scary, super frightening edition with real life terror. Sorry if you're not laughing, you're crying. This came out from one of our very cherished assistants here in CalExit. Political violence is unacceptable, but will it happen in the future? 68% say yes. That's very close to the amount of people who say that the country can't be brought together. Here's also part of that poll. Do you talk to people with different political views? Online, about 10%. In person, about 10%. So about 90% does not speak to someone with different political views in general. Wow. Maybe every once in a while you'll meet somebody. Now, if you almost never talk to them, but you do, it's like 60% online, 48%. So that's 60% online, almost never speak to someone with the opposite side. It's damn close, that 64% we can't come together. And it's basically showing what I've been bringing up. People aren't talking to each other. I don't care if you have some encounter group and you brought two, a black person and a racist person out of Chicago together. In general, across America, 90% are not talking to the person online or a lot routinely. So that means, maybe 3 times a year I say hi, maybe 5 times, versus I'm regularly talking to you once a week and I'm going, hey, I don't share your views, but I can see you at the same grocery store, kids store. I can see you're a fellow human like me. And maybe we do have some commonalities. And I'm really upset you voted for this, but I can also see you love your dog too at the dog park. That doesn't happen. That does not happen. 90% of the time, they never see that person that often to know that. Just a few interactions. Do people get along? Well, 62% said, yeah, but politics drives them apart. 62%, that's 2/3. And I love this poll. And it didn't get picked up on the news because it's like, oh, do we get along? Yeah, bro, we do. But politics drives us apart. Great. So you're working to come together with other people in politics? 90%. Hell no. Okay, we have no problem but politics, and 90% of you aren't really putting the work in to make it better. And 62% of you think it's going to get bad. So that tells me it's just going to get worse. Here we go. New poll reveals most Americans believe the country is too far gone to overcome its deep divisions. Just 1/3 of voters think the United States is capable of solving its problems. This came out in Daily Beast. Here is another poll. Do you think the United States is on the right track or headed in the wrong direction? This is part of that New York Times poll. This is this. So just a different site. So we did some data analysis. Division did get worse in 2002. That was right after the January 6th Capitol attack. Then you notice that, I'm talking about the peak on the far left. If you look at the far left, you'll notice a green peak and a red peak. The peak went up because January 6th, people were scared. This is also during COVID. The peak starts dropping when they start saying, hey, 90% of the people aren't dying anymore from COVID. You're almost going to be let out. So everybody's like, okay, I was terrified by January 6th, but we might get through COVID. I might be able to go out and have, go to a movie. So I think people chilled out a little bit. But then you'll notice that line, you come out of that dip, starts rising slightly, almost immediately. And then it stays. Now you have another drop where the yellow is, where it looks like the country's coming together a little bit. Roughly July 2024 to July 2nd to almost the end of July. That was Trump survived a second assassination attempt, or his first. And people thought, hey, that got too far. We got to calm it down a little bit. And it did, a little bit. But then you'll notice out of that month, it went right back to the trend line. Like that lasted a month, less than a month. And it was like, snap back to where the trend line is. And then now it's going back up. And then the other graph shows you where we are today, where it's 64%, only 1/3 say you can fix it. So the country came together because we were terrified we were all going to die. And then we were told we're not going to die. Okay, great. And then Trump got shot and we kind of came together. But we seem to stay roughly in this trend line of about 60-30 of hell no, we can't come together for the last couple of years. Just to back that up, here's this poll from the American National Estimates Survey, I think. So it's called Effective Polarization, how you feel good about your party versus the other party. And I like this one because it goes back to the 1980s. And you can clearly see things were starting to get bad with Obama. So you can notice the red line at the bottom. So it's called in-party and out-party feeling. You'll notice that the blue line, own party feeling, is how you feel about your party. People generally feel as enthusiastic about their party as they always have. What's happened is the hate to the other party has doubled. That's what the red line is showing you. That drop in I hate the other party massively grew with Obama. And then it grew massively even more with Trump. But you can tell if you look at Obama, the trend starts with Obama, that I hate the other side. Then it gets even bigger. And ES is one of the top research sites for political science. Here's this poll. I found this one scary. And all of these polls are coming out the last couple of weeks, everybody. Okay, so this is the last couple of weeks. This is all exploding. In the wake of Charlie Kirk's, just the way the public reacted. Again, not his death. These polls were not taken the day after he died. They were taken 2 weeks after, when everybody was thoroughly upset with each other. Liberals have jumped from 12 to 28% on America may need to resort to violence, which so violence is bad and should not be in politics, and no one agrees with that, and that's wrong and bad. I'm simply showing data, okay, just to be clear. This is bad. This scares me. There's an increase of people saying might need to resort to violence. It went from 18 to 25 for independents, 28 to 31 for Republicans. That's a minor jump. But for Democrats, from 12 to 28, that's almost 3 times. And that's 2024 to 2025. So close to a 300% rise in 1 year. Violence is bad. And this is what they were talking about, was the right was saying, oh, the left's behind this. And the left got upset with that. And part of it was that some people on the left were celebrating. I don't support that. But part of it was that people on the left felt like this. Charlie Kirk was not exactly a great guy to a lot of people here in California. And he had no problem offending people here. It's gotten so bad that we had, these are 2 podcasts that came out October 4th. So right around the time of these surveys, here's these 2 podcasts. One is a clip from Fox News. The other is a clip from an African-American podcaster who works on Roland Martin's show, which is kind of a liberal show. So African-American focus, politics, liberal on the bottom, Fox News on the top. So left on the bottom, right on the top. That's the point of this. Both of them are having shows October 3rd, Fox News, October 4th, the liberals. And in the top corner, you can, I mean, if you watch this on a big screen, you can see it, but basically there's the captions. The guy on the right saying, hey, Megan, a guy almost basically got killed. Shouldn't we need to ratchet it down. And I'm worried about if we act more extreme, that'll encourage the other side to be more extreme. He's trying to be reasonable. He's like, look, I'm a conservative and I'm on Fox News too, but shouldn't we be working to calm it down? And maybe we on our side should tone it down a little bit. And I know the left's not fair and they're not going to do it, but maybe we on the right should do a little bit, just because, my God, what if we really upset someone and someone does something stupid and bad and wrong? Megyn Kelly responds, no, can't work with the left. They're crazy. That was basically it. And she kept calling him naive. You're sweet. Like he was too damn dumb to get it. Like he was just a simpleton to think that. And she's really like, no, they're crazy. They're gone. We can't work with them. Okay. The day before on a liberal show. Let's ask that question. Will America not continue? Will there be a government or won't there? Well, it's a good question, but I think it is a solid observation. But I think if we're going to ask if America can continue, we should also just ask, should it? Day apart, total opposite bandwidth people, liberal, conservative. I can't work with them. I'm not sure the country should come together. And then at the same time, here's this survey showing the exact same thing. Around this time, here's Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, getting back into it with national divorce. By the way, we liberals here at Cal Exton invented the national divorce phrase first in 2017, 2018. She took it from us. You're welcome. Now, this is what got me was, do you know who Matt Walsh is, Professor?
It's not coming to mind.
Super hardcore conservative. He did a documentary called Am I Racist, which wasn't very progressive. And then another one about how trans people are, screwed up in the head. That's his claim to fame. On the far right middle there, no, I don't support Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh, 6 million views. Far right, halfway down. I cannot unite with the left. They will spit on my grave when I'm dead. There's no uniting. So Dark Side, if you go to the top right left, someone named Dark Side to 30,000 views. I can't coexist. The next one with 40,000, I can't coexist. Next one underneath that, 12.6 million views. Where the hell does the US go from there? Next one underneath that, we can't coexist, can't coexist. They all basically say we can't coexist with about 20 to 40,000 per each post. The black box on the bottom right by Amiri King had about 200,000, and Matt Walsh had 6 million. All of these came out around September. So roughly in the wake of the Charlie Kirk event. And this also came out around that same time. Liberals are willing to cut off family members if they're not in the right politics, more than conservatives, which I find alarming or concerning. I don't believe that to be true, but hey, this study came out at the same time. And then finally, here's this one from Just Security. Assassinations in America, How Political Violence Became Personal. It came out October 1st. There was a survey taken by the Chicago Project on Security and Threats that found 40% of Democrats were willing to use force to remove Trump from office, a number that corresponds roughly with similar response among Republicans during Joe Biden's administration. So another poll showing about 40%. I know it's sobering. I want to get your honest reaction. I know that was a blitzkrieg. It's a bomb. Honest, raw reaction for a minute. How does that make you feel? Thoughts, feelings, just immediately.
It's a lot, that's for sure. It's the last piece that stuck with me because while they did this survey of Democrats that said 40% might resort to violence to remove Trump, only one side called by Trump actually resorted to violence in an effort to stop the counting and pronouncement of a president on January 6th. Yep. And so, having a tit for tat here is something. And I guess what, you would think it would be easy to say, oh, wow, Twitter, people just talking junk, and these are, polls, and, there's a world values survey that's been asked in multiple, 111 countries since the 80s. And one of the questions in there is fundamental is you answer on a dichotomy. Would you say that most people can be trusted, or that you have to be very careful around people? And I use that survey with students to try to see where my students are. And it turns out we're not very trusting. And this is in a social work department. And it's funny because typically when I first started doing the survey, it turned out the students younger were far less trusting than the national average. And so it would be easy to dismiss some of these things as, well, that's just the way you ask it. And well, we have these trends and that, except we have seen real violence. There really are armed military police in Washington, D.C. right now. Maybe still in LA, I don't know that. So when I hear these things, it's overwhelming because of the volume. but to me, it's overwhelming because it isn't just words and Twitter talk. And that's what this blitz of concern brings up to me.
I'm a human, right? And I come in a spaceship and I land in front of your house. Hey, I've been in a cave for about 100 years. Last time I was flying around, America seemed to be doing pretty good. Everything's totally cool and America's going to last. And anybody who thinks that there's any problems with that is ridiculous, right? Or have we entered the point where you're looking at all this data and it's no longer unreasonable to begin to wonder where the direction of the country will go or if it will stay united?
Well, I guess what's frustrating is it does seem like the staying power of disruption is more forceful than the staying power of unity. And you showed that with your poll where you said, hey, folks sort of calmed their jets when there was a attempt on the president's life. And it was pretty short-lived. Now, the January 6th was a bigger rupture. It put us at different places too. It looks like it was a longer period. I guess maybe, I don't know if that's true, but I guess that's a concern, is that it does feel like, I would say to this alien that we've watched things rocking us and there can be more, and it does feel like we're, a big rock away from, real cascade.
And again, I don't want to celebrate misery. The point is to show that when we're talking about California independence or the idea, I don't think it's a fanciful concept anymore. I think we're looking at the point where we've hit where it's a survival concept. As I told you the story, you and I think the first time we ever met, I use this all the time. If not, I use this all the time. You and I are on a yacht and we've been sailing for a while. It's been great. And then one year we noticed the water goes up an inch. Then the next year, another inch. Next year, another inch. We kind of ignore it because we're still dry. Then after 5 years, the water goes up and now it's touching the bottom of our shoes, right? It's actually over the deck line. It's not, the boat isn't sinking, but occasionally that water's lapping up against our shoes. Never happened before. And you and I have watched it go inch, 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 inch. Now it's smacking against our shoes. Our shoes are getting wet. I turn to you and say, can we at least have a conversation about building a life raft? And you say, idiot. It's a joke. It's this. This was an interview the New York Times did with the top 3 leading experts in fascism. It's called We're Leaving. Happened about 3 months ago. My colleagues and friends were walking around going, we have checks and balances. Calm down, relax, chill. We got checks and balances. Chill out. And I thought, oh my God, we're the people on the Titanic saying the ship won't ever go down. That's Marcy Shore, one of the foremost experts on totalitarianism, who has now left America and lives in Canada because she's afraid of being removed. By the way, that's the Calixa talking points. I've been telling that ship sinking thing for about 4 years. And then I saw her going, we're sinking and people, let's play the band. Hey, the yacht's sinking, bro. I don't want to talk about that. So literally here's the experts going, the people who are like, calm down, relax, chill. You ain't getting it. You're not. And by the way, she bailed. She's gone. Didn't even want to test it out. Just a little bit more. This guy was talking about how the two parties view each other as the enemy more than anything else. Also, I wanted to show this. This also came out around the same time. It's more evidence like this is actual people talking around the same time. Here's just 6 more podcasts where everybody's talking about can America survive, and the division is really bad. I just wanted to show that there was polls and academic data at the same time that regular Joes and famous people are all, so you have regular Joes, famous people, and hard data all saying the same thing, all within the same time frame. So I think we've hit a new point where it's the broken heart syndrome. One of my favorite stories to tell people is Bleeding Heart, Kansas. Do you remember Bleeding Heart, Kansas, Professor?
No, tell me more.
Okay. The Civil War, by the way, I did a video on this. You can just look at the channel. The Civil War was horrible. 650,000 people died. And a lot of people go, well, how'd they get to killing each other? And the answer is always, oh, it's slavery. And it, you know, is a sin that had to be washed away. And it's like, yeah, that's nice, but not really. There was a thing called Bleeding Kansas about 5 years before the Civil War happened. The federal government said, we're going to allow Kansas on the frontier to vote if they want to be a slave or free state. Well, it was right next to the South and right next to the North. And so Northerners and Southerners flooded into Kansas to rig elections so that it would be, because if you got another slave state, now you control the Senate. If you got another free state, now you control the Senate. So they said, hey, whoever votes. By the way, the federal government sent in no officials and no vote counters. So it's just, we trust your word on whatever ballots you guys turn in. Okay, Wild West. Well, the elections get rigged by the Southerners from Missouri. And the Northerners don't like that. And then they go, okay, well, we're going to make our own northern town that's for free staters in Kansas. And we're not going to recognize your government because you rigged an election. Sound familiar? The Southerners then go burn their town down to the ground, but they don't kill anybody. Then a guy named John Brown, who's not even from the area, he's a famous abolitionist one. He'd be the guy that did Harper's Ferry Raid, shows up in Bleeding, Kansas, hears about people fighting with each other and all the tension. He shows up, guns down 5 Southerners and goes, hey, that's payback for you burning down that northern town. He wasn't even in the area. He was a rabble rouser who heard, and he goes, you know what? I'll show up and I'll get revenge for the North against the South. And I'll take it up a notch. Me by myself. I'll decide we should do that. He kills 5 people. Then the Southerners in the area go, well, let's go kill 5 Northerners. Then the Northerners go, well, let's go kill a Southerner. The Southerners go, let's go kill a Northerner. This goes on for about 5 years. And it never kills more than 55 people. Civil War cost 650,000. Bleeding Kansas, 55. But what happens is that newspapers in the South and North are constantly coming with these newspaper articles of Northern man shot in the face in front of his daughter by wicked Southerners. Southern man shot in the back by a gang of rabid Northerners. So you're reading these newspaper articles of fellow Americans will just murder me in cold blood, and they don't care. And that went on for 5 years. And then you had a Northern senator got almost beaten to death in the Senate by a Southerner with a cane. And then you had John Brown's raid at Harper's Ferry, where he said, I'm going to raid a federal installation in a Southern state to cause a slave rebellion in a Southern state. So John Brown's interesting because he basically kicked off Bleeding Kansas by himself. And then he went from Kansas on the frontier all the way back to Virginia and said, I'm going to pick the most hardcore Southern state and try to start a rebellion in there. So the Southerners are like, okay, the Northerners are here to kill us. They killed us in Kansas, and now they're here in our own states, and they're ready to kill us in our sleep. We got to be ready to kill them. So it shouldn't be that surprising because there was about 50 people dead, and really only about 5 people, the first 5 people that John Brown killed, the Southerners burned a town down, but they didn't kill anybody. Then John Brown goes, I'm going to ratchet it up. 5 people dead. The Boston Massacre in 1772, I think, was only 5 Americans dead, and it caused the American Revolution. So one violent shooting of 5 people dead in cold blood is enough to terrify people to launch a war in 1886 and 1770. How do we know that we're not approaching that same period now where we're talking about people being unalived on video and back and forth?
Well, we don't know where we are, except that we know where we are. We don't know, I mean.
Sorry.
As we were talking, no, I mean, as I was you were talking, one of the things I was thinking about was, probably the lead determinant of being having a shooting injury
Yeah.
is whether or not you have a gun in your house. And right now, the National Guard has brought guns to people's houses in multiple cities across this country. So does that spark anything? I have no idea. But there weren't guns in the house prior to the National Guard showing up on city streets. And where that goes, I don't know. I mean, I am myself, I'm particularly caught up in the state of this authoritarian seizing of power and consolidation. I've reached out to learn more about Cal exit out of that concern. And because I think voting more Democrats and going to one-time demonstrations is not a pathway forward.
Thank you.
And what the other pathways forward need to be investigated and pursued. And that has to happen by millions of people. And how millions of people get inspired to do something different than wake up at 6 o'clock, drink a cup of coffee, and go to work, I don't know. Because we've been well socialized to those of us privileged enough to do so. Wake up at 6 o'clock, grab a cup of coffee, and go to work as if everything's fine. Because maybe it's okay for me, even though it might not be okay. But I don't think things are okay in the state of the nation. And I'm deeply concerned.
Top 3 experts in totalitarianism agree with you. So much she left. Also, the governor of California also said September 24th, recently, I'm not sure we'll have elections in the future. I'm feared we won't have an election in 2028. Straight up said it. And I believe him. I know politicians say whatever, but he hasn't talked this way before. And he seemed perturbed when he was on Stephen Colbert saying this. I understand be careful what you believe from a politician, but he seemed like he was the spirit talked to him.
Well, he seemed, he and others in the state are now motivated to change. I don't know if this is I don't know how to characterize this, but change democracy. Trump makes a phone call to get votes so he doesn't lose seats in the House that could make him face impeachment in the next election. Right? Hey, change your district so that I don't lose, so that I can win Texas.
Yeah.
Period. So now California, through a different process, because it's the only legal mechanism we can do it, which is to ask the voters to initiate a changing of district maps in between the census.
Yeah.
But why? Because if there isn't a counterbalance to what another state has already agreed to do, our institutional setup is such that the entire country will be subject to that one state's activity. And so as a counterbalance, these are extreme measures. That's why I say, things are not okay. And, those are the officials. Those are the elected, people in our government, whether they're saying maybe there won't be a midterm election, actively pursuing extra governmental means or institutional means to counterbalance the dictates of the President of the United States and the cascading consolidation of power that is being pursued. And that may work, but it may not. I mean, California voters midterm election or a random election that only has some weird ballot measure on it, like, who knows if that passes or fails? And even if it does pass or fail, what is this? We're just gonna, as a country, any state who can figure out how to change their maps for the person in power can change that. That's not America. I mean, that's something else. And so we're in a period of something else. And so whether or not, I mean, I don't want to hope for what, folks are calling, will there be another January 6th? Will there be, mass insurrection? And I mean, will there be violence? Like, I don't want to call for any of that shit. But what I can say is
no one does, just for the record. No one backs that.
No. I mean, but what is happening is extraordinary. It's outside the realm of what the previous rules were set up to allow. And
this is why I wanted to talk to you. Like, I knew you get it, right? This is not normal. This is not good. This is not, oh, we've had bad times. This is some unique things in history are going down that aren't good.
And I do think, this is a broader call, but, there's a rally on October 18th that is a continuation of rallies that have been called for people to at least stand up and say, this isn't normal. Hey, not okay. This type of one-off every few months we'll get out in the streets isn't going to change.
Thank you.
The activities of the federal administration. And, some sort of, on the national front, a sustained effort is necessary. So there's a call for October 18th. I've seen other calls that are organizing people for November 5th in Washington, D.C. to try and put together a more sustained presence of this is not okay. And so in exploring PAL exit, like I've done, I mean, simple sort of honest question, what is this thing? What are some other options out there? Because whatever's happening right now calls for something different. And, as somebody, I want to be trying to be a part of what do we do? Because what's happening right now, I don't find okay. And I think that's true of hopefully, if not thousands, millions of people. But until we do something different, like the march of more troops in more cities, more judges under attack, more enemies of the administration being indicted, like that's just what is happening right now. Back to your original question, that is actually happening.
This gets into, I see articles about soft secession.
Mm.
And they're going, well, we can, California sued Trump. California has all these lawsuits ready to go. The moment he does something wrong, California has millions or billions in this legal fund. And I thought, okay, but that didn't stop him denying disaster assistance. That did not stop the National Guard coming in. That did not stop the Marines. They were able to harass and terrorize people for about a couple of weeks. And then I saw Newsom, and I understand he's doing what he can do, but he comes out on TV, goes, yeah, we used the system and we stopped him. 2 weeks after the fact, right? So for like 2 weeks, you were told it's going to work through the thing, and maybe some people are going to die or be shot or burned alive. And just wait, Governor. The system works. We'll get there in a couple of weeks. And I remember in 2016 to 2018, California said Trump's never going to do unlimited detention, and he's never going to be able to round up people. And our cops are never going to work with him. And we'll make sure our businesses never work with him. This is California, damn it. 2/3 all the businesses ignored what the California government said, and because they can, and reported to the feds. 60% of all the police and sheriff's districts, and it was the smaller areas, it wasn't the big cities, but they basically ignored California and went with what the Fed said because legally they can. About
universities are turning over information on their students and their professors to the federal government. So the legal system doesn't have an enforcement arm. So this back when, Doge and Elon Musk were sitting in offices trying to turn off the money flow. How do we get the computer to turn off money that we've already allocated? The courts could outlaw that, but who's going to go actually grab the 20-year-old computer geek from the terminal and move him or her out of the seat trying to turn off the money? That was that strategy of, well, the courts will rule this. They were trying to make Doge is an extra congressional. It's not an official organization. Elon Musk hasn't been officially appointed, so we'll just get the courts to make all that stop. Even if the courts successfully ruled those things, which I don't know how it turned out, the court doesn't control any armed guard to go down there and say, you're going to leave this seat now. So if the administration says, well, we're just not going to follow the court ruling, just like you're saying, there is no mechanism. It's just a piece of paper. And some people on that said, well, like, that legitimacy of the authority of the court has already been breached. So relying on it as a continual strategy it's like the person in your quote was saying. It's a false hope.
Yeah, the Atlantic quote, I forget what that is, but yeah. That's
so there are checks and balances. Yes, there are. They're written into law, but that's the exact thing that is being disregarded. So saying that they exist or that the courts might do something.
You and JJ had the exact same reaction to seeing this picture, just kind of like, oh wow, and it's her saying ship sinking, it's that bad, and then other people don't want to hear it. My favorite stories of Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass in Germany, 1935. Again, just like in Bleeding Kansas, initially nobody was killed, only property destruction. But that night, every Jewish house had their property destroyed, burned. Nobody was killed, maybe a little roughed up, not too bad. But the cops were standing there watching. And then the next day, none of the politicians complained. There were no detectives coming around. There were no cops investigating anything. There was no discussion on the radio by the government. And so all the Jews in Germany go, okay, well, there was basically two groups of them. And I got this story from a rabbi that one of them said, we got to get out. It's going to get worse. They literally just smashed all of our homes and buildings with the cops standing right next to them, and no one in the government did anything or said anything on our behalf at all. They can do whatever they want. We need to get the hell out. But about half of them said, nah, they're not going to do anything. They're just blowing off some steam. I know Hitler wrote this book, but it's politics. He needed to win an election. He just says things to get people riled up. There hadn't really been a pogrom against the Jews since like the early 1800s. So it's 1930. They're like, bro, my grandpa wasn't even alive last time they tried that. They won't round us up. That's never happened. That's ancient history. Well, all those Jews are dead, basically goes the story. And the ones who go on the night of Kristallnacht, time to get the hell out. Did you see how everything broke down, right? The cops did not protect us. All the cops sat by. All the detectives did nothing. All the attorney generals didn't do anything. All the politicians said nothing. Like, no one did anything across the entire country, and they attacked all of our cities. Time to get out. Half of them said, no, come on. We have checks and balances. Chill out. Relax. Exhale. We have checks and balances. All dead. So now we get to the point that you made, which I think is brilliant. What do? Shouldn't we look into something? And that's where we point out to the Blue Ribbon Panel Committee. Now, we do have an initiative out, and the initiative would put a vote in front of the California public for independence. Some people find that too extreme. I think it's just appropriate. A lot of people do like it. But Let's say you're like, well, same thing. Can we figure out what independence would look like, or can we do an investigation? A real easy thing is to call for a blue ribbon panel investigation. So the California government does this about 5 to 20 times a year. They do it on aging, stem cell research, clean vehicle fueling, nail salons. So my favorite story is a nail salon. A couple of years ago, some women were getting sick. So they had a blue ribbon panel. They got a bunch of nail salon owners together, a bunch of people who get their nails done together, a bunch of business people, a bunch of chemists who understand the chemicals that you're using to keep the nail salon stuff together, a couple professors, a couple government people, and they had an investigation for a few months. And basically it was, why are women getting sick at nail salons? What's happening? And basically it came down to one of the fluids that they put some of the tools in needed better antibacterial stuff in. That real simple. But because people got sick at different locations, they go full investigation, not just a guess, like full. Boom, we got it. Bromide X needs to be bromide Y. I'm making the term up. Problem solved. Now, the government in California can enact that or not. They can go, hey, thanks, but we don't want to do anything. Usually what they do is they go, oh, so if we enact this change, we can appear to be saving lives. Well, great, I want to be reelected and I want dollars. So that's typically what happens. We could have the same thing with CalExit. The idea of California becoming independent. We're not saying it's a good idea. We're not saying to do it. We're not saying to vote on it. What we're saying is, can the government look into it? And it's called a blue ribbon panel. These panels consist of experts in the relevant field, academics, policymakers. They often establish legislation, their purpose. California has on many topics, marijuana, childhood education. It's a mechanism for California to leverage expertise and comprehensive analysis to address critical issues and inform policy. I did not write this, AI did. So this is something we wrote to legislators. We're proposing a blue ribbon panel investigation that does not mean you're endorsing secession or supporting it. It only means that you're saying, is it worthwhile to know the facts about this idea before pursuing it further? This is an inherently reasonable stance given the actions taken by Trump. When the Atlantic magazine says that it is a reasonable idea worth exploring, there is no more room for debate. While not causing independence, a formal government investigation into the topic of independence was a key to encouraging the people of Scotland to pursue their first vote for devolution from England within 5 years of their blue ribbon panel being committed. It's called the Coleman Commission. It was by Kenneth Coleman. Computer's a little bit on the fritz, but it was basically they got 20 people together, government minister, social welfare minister, social work minister, sociologist. And it didn't say, hey, Scotland, you should be independent. It'd be super easy and there'd be no problems and totally cool, dude. It said, you could do it, but here's these problems. And you could do that, but then here's these problems. Or you could do this and here's these problems. And then the politicians had to look at it and go, okay, well, we can fix some of those problems to make it doable. But they weren't going out like with Brexit, going, everything gets wonderful the moment we vote for this and so much more money saved. That's not what happened. And like in England, I know people felt duped by Brexit after it happened. They felt like they were telling people so much health money is going to be saved. And that was a total lie. They put it on the bus. It was a complete lie. Mm-hmm. Scotland didn't do that. They go, our government's going to look into the facts. We're going to let them do it for a year. They have to have public meetings. And then we're all going to shut up and read the same report. And then we're all going to have a discussion about the same set of facts. Mm-hmm. And it's probably not going to say, hey, California's a cakewalk and it's wonderful. But it'll probably point out a few things like, when you're one of the top 10 GDPs in the world, you kind of do have power. Now there's water issues and others, but we thought this is a low-hanging fruit. Get the California government to pursue a blue ribbon panel. Now the CalExit initiative does that. It does two things. It calls for a blue ribbon panel and it calls for a vote. What we figured out is that calling for a vote is a bit radical, although we're pursuing it. Calling for the panel seems to become, well, where's that quote from the Atlantic magazine? It's just reasonable now. So if we can call for that panel, then we can make this happen. So, by the way, this is just an example of a blue ribbon panel. The Cal account blue ribbon panel was called for. They wanted to make a special bank account for poor people, I think, basically public banking.
Yeah.
Now, here's the great thing about the blue ribbon panel. It takes 2 legislators to propose it.
Yeah.
There's about 120 or 130 in Sacramento. It takes 2 to propose it and about 5 to support it. I have a slide, but the computer's fritzing out. We looked at about 7 blue ribbon panels, and it was always 2 people to start it, and then about 5 more backed it up, and full-blown investigation, basically, on its way. I'm cartooning it a little bit. But when we look at the fact that there's 120 plus legislators or around there,
Well,
and we need 2.
and I think it's worth saying, I mean, just you've raised in our conversation, you shared this idea, and I'm like, okay, let me learn some more about this. I mean, this idea about separating, I didn't realize how American of an idea it is. I mean, I'm led to believe from the history that we were 13 colonies and then we just added things to us. So, I mean, obviously the independence movement was a separation movement. But then what I didn't know is that then Vermont separated from other states and became an independent nation for 14 years prior to then joining the Union. That Kentucky was a county of Virginia and went through some process to say, we don't think we're represented well in Virginia. We'd like to be our own state. And then Virginia passed legislation to allow Kentucky to separate from Virginia and then pursue being a state of its own. And I read that had the Union not accepted Kentucky, they would have simply been an independent nation. Now, there would have been a lot of risks with that, as Kentucky on its own with no infrastructure made available from the Union, but that it would have been a Vermont, an independent republic. And so that this idea is not, it's actually quite American. And there are a number of different separation movements, ideas in states like Texas, Vermont, California. So I just learned that there's more talk about what are some parameters around which to seek independence. And that, this is that it's, the idea is there. I was also taken by, just to take us a different direction, in the, that survey that you showed from the New York Times.
Let me find that.
I went into that and looked deeper into the data, because if you click on, in the New York Times article, there's a link that will take you to all of the questions that were asked in that survey.
Oh, yeah.
You showed how it's broken out by, you can see across gender, or age, or race, but there's also region.
Yeah.
And, when we think about America, we often do talk about the regions of the Northeast, the South, the Midwest, and the West. And in most things, the Midwest and the South aligned in questions.
Yeah.
And the Northeast and the West aligned. And we kind of talk about that. Well, there's the coasts and then there's everywhere else. It's funny, in looking at some of that data, it looked like that the Midwest is the swing region. Sometimes they align with the West, and sometimes but more often they align with the South. And the Northeast and the West tend to align pretty regularly. So even on that question of, do you think America's political system can address the nation's problems? If you slide over to the region there, you see that this is an instance where the too divided, the Midwest joins the West in its alarm.
Right.
But probably for very different reasons.
Right.
So I think that demonstrates that there are splinters that align. And then we zero in on California and the question of whether we should be thinking about this. To me, it goes back to what are options and and who's pursuing what. And, obviously the governor is pursuing, how do we be a buoy against what Trump and the governor of Texas are doing? Exploring the question of California as an independent nation seems like a wise endeavor. Simply to ask.
He said,
and the other thing is,
governor said, are we going to have elections?
Yeah. And what sounds cool about this Blue Ribbon Commission piece to me, and you showed the little clip from one of the statutes that was forming the Blue Ribbon Commission on the Cal accounts.
Yes,
is
sir.
that in such a thing, you can set the parameters of the questions. So, I mean, I think that there are more questions to ask than just simply, how can this happen? It's like, should we be pursuing the same two-party system in an independent California? Should, a lot more government, there are more governance questions that California should be exploring of how to ensure that we do the best by Californians. And we haven't asked that question for several. When was the California Constitution first put together? I mean, we haven't asked that for literally.
It's been a little while.
Likely, 100 plus, if not 200 years. And, we're in a different place. There's technology of governance has changed. And I think asking the question, what would it be if California were an independent nation, is it just a worthy area of study?
That's basically the big idea. Is you want to have a vote for independence? I'm there. A lot of people are, but maybe not everybody. But if you're looking at what's going on, are you really saying that investigating this now is crazy? Like, this is a crazy idea to have the government come together in California and say, we're at least going to investigate what happens if we got a sail on our own because the ship we're attached to is sinking and it's going to pull us down by the mooring ropes.
The California government itself is doing more than just asking the question. You shared an article with me that highlighted that Washington, Oregon, and Hawaii and California started a West Health Alliance.
Yep.
In answer to the real actions that the federal government is doing to shut down disease prevention and to shut down operations of the national CDC. These Western states have said, well, we're going to take that role on ourselves. And so California is doing things without the study. They're forming actual alliance partnerships in areas that the federal government used to take responsibility. And so to think we wouldn't study further ways that California could take responsibility for itself. It just seems a very useful and timely effort.
I will get you that $20 after the show. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that. I'm sorry. Exactly. That's the big idea. Is why is it wrong to have an investigation when we're watching this chaos happen around us? We didn't say do it. We said, let's get some people who know what they're talking about together and have them investigate and then inform all of us about the facts of this so we can have an informed discussion. How's that bad or wrong in a democracy? And how's that bad or wrong if you're the government and your number one concern is the safety of the people and you're watching what we're watching right now? How's that inappropriate to do that? To say, I want to look into this. I'm worried about where this is going.
Well, I've spent a lot of time in my life studying things. It's kind of what I do for a living. So, I think California would do well to study options in a time that, the federal government has placed troops on its soil.
That's the big idea. let me see here. Support separation. Okay, so I wanted to show you this. This is the one showing that this is an example of two different blue ribbon panels. All this is showing is that if you're going to look at the A's count, it's 7. I know it's hard to see, but these are two different blue ribbon panels, and it's showing it one vote. It took 12 A's to pass. Another one, it took 7. On the other one, it's showing 14 votes, and on the other one, it's showing 5. So all this is showing is that I wasn't exaggerating. It takes very few votes. It takes 2 people to propose this, and then roughly about 5 to 7-ish to make it happen.
So is that to say that it may be something to look into further, that these don't have to follow the full legislative process, because any given bill, and these are named bills, would go into committee and you'd see votes of, the number of people on whatever committee that could be this low. But ultimately it would have to be heard, any other bill would be heard on the floor and then signed, ultimately in each house, signed by the governor. Is there a different process that might be in place for these blue ribbon?
There is.
Commissions?
The resolution. Okay, let's see. Legislature resolution, which is 2. I'll explain this here in a second. This comes from JJ, the political director. This is what he told me. The blue ribbon panel call, which is 2, and then there is the initiative. Okay, so what JJ told me was, I've shown you the blue ribbon panel one. This is the standard. If you and I called our legislator, or you ran into a legislator, or we had 50,000 people call 2 legislators, and 2 of them say, hey, I want to call for a blue ribbon panel, and they can get 5 more to agree, that's it. The other way you can do it is called a public resolution. So when Donald Trump got elected, the day after, the California legislature did a combined resolution saying, we feel like we woke up in a foreign country.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't really do anything, but it was so 2 people can call for a resolution, which calls for the blue ribbon panel.
Uh-huh.
So you can either directly have the legislators call for it, or they can call for a resolution, which in the resolution would call for a blue ribbon panel. Both of those options only take 2 legislators to get it going.
Mm-hmm.
The third option, which is the one we're known for, is to get 600,000 people to sign the petition. So when we're looking at low-hanging fruit, yes, we want the petition signed. We want the full vote. We want the support. We've also realized 2 out of 130.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And they can either do a resolution, or they can call for the panel directly. And then they only need about 5 friends.
Mm.
And we're in business. After that, as we like to say, imagine this. Just picture this headline. This isn't even a vote. There's not even a vote. A vote hasn't even been proposed to go up on the ballot. Californians haven't even voted, and they haven't had a successful vote to leave. This is just the California government officially says they're going to launch a blue ribbon panel into CalExit.
Mm-hmm.
That would be global news.
Yeah.
This is one of the world's biggest economies. You know that would be an explosion. Just the announcement of the government, and we're talking about 7 people out of 120 people. But on TV, it would be read the California government. They wouldn't say it, especially on conservative channels. They wouldn't go, 7 California people in the government decided this. It would be crazy California. They're looking into full-blown secession. They'll never mention 7 out of 120. That's an easy win. Here's the Kallman Commission, by the way. That's Kenneth Kallman. You can see the panel of experts in the middle at the bottom. And then at the middle of the top is them holding a meeting in the Capitol. So it's about 11 to 20 people. There's the official report on the left, Serving Scotland Better. And on the far right, you can see people who are in the commission, and they're all holding that same Serving Scotland Better. So it wasn't 100 people. It didn't take millions of dollars. It was about 10, 20 experts. They met for a year. They published a report that caused Scottish independence. We only need a few votes. Here's a little bit on the Coleman Commission on Scottish devolution. Just a little bit. It came out in 2008. They finished within 1 year. And let me show you this last slide. That's an example of the Coleman Commission's itinerary. There's the letter from Kenneth Coleman saying, "The future of Scottish devolution within the Union, a first report." I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm charged by the Scottish people to investigate this, and he did. Now, you were saying you can write in the conditions. Well, that's exactly what they did. If you look at the right, the tasks will be principles to consider. Underlying principles by reference to the commission should be its thinking and conclusions. Functions, boundary, devolved responsibilities of the Scottish Parliament, where that boundary might be moved, engagement to consider how the commission can communicate to all the Scottish people and provide evidence, financial accountability to consider the current funding arrangements for the Scottish government and how it goes, and intergovernmental relations. How can the Scottish and UK government deal more like foreign countries? So they literally said, well, we're going to study. And then I don't have the full list, but here's half the list. Honorable Lord, everybody's a lord or a lady, right?
Sure.
So Lord Boyd of Dunconsby, former Lord Advocate and Labour peer. That just means he was a politician who ran and he's been around. Chancellor of the University of Glasgow, academic. Housing cooperative expert, Randy Deer, sound familiar? Retired judge of the European Court. Convener of the Scottish Liberal Democratic Party, another guy of the party. Former Scottish office minister, conservative, an agricultural college guy, so technical expert, youth activist, and Telegraph Media Group. So media, academics, business, lawyers, but it wasn't 1 million people.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part. It wasn't, that's it. That's it. They got, and when California does its blue ribbon commissions, it doesn't call 1,000 people together. It doesn't take 50 million years. It's about 10 to 20 people. They meet in the Capitol. They take a couple pictures, maybe some video, and they release a report within 6 months to a year.
Well, yeah. And all that could be stipulated as to who'd be on it, how it would do its business and meet in any piece.
Exactly, like you say. So here's legislation. Here's on Clear Lake. They wanted to establish a blue ribbon panel to make Clear Lake beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
They put all the specifics in there.
Oh, yeah. Meet quarterly to discuss review research, et cetera, et cetera.
Nope. Same thing. Here's another.
Has CalExit started to draft what they think has CalExit started to draft a resolution or piece of legislation that it could start to shop to legislators?
Absolutely. The resolution is drafted, is done.
Is that a public thing, or is that something that you're looking to release at some point?
I can get it to you. We haven't done anything with it yet, but I'll send that to you like right after we're done here.
That'd be an interesting read.
Yeah. Our political director wrote it. And only 2 people need to sign that. And I kind of showed, we didn't have a write-up, but we had these 4 bullet points that we were going to email the legislators.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a write-up. We wanted to just do bullets initially. That was just a guess on the best way to do it, but it wasn't a full write-up. It was more, because all they really have to do is say, I want to propose this blue ribbon panel.
Right.
If you're doing a resolution, it's got to be written out. So it is, and this found our year of our Lord. For a normal blue ribbon panel, they just go, hey, I want to do this, bro. Do you want to back me on this? And then they write up some legislation, which, looks like this kind of boring boilerplate. That's all they got to do.
Well, I don't know. I've worked with reporters, and what I've found is if I want the story I want, it's better if I more or less write it.
Yep. 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 Yep.
My guess is the legislature is very similar. I mean, I've done some work with legislatures.
Yep.
No,
Yep.
So
So we do have the resolution, but I could see the blue ribbon panel legal text, I think is what we're talking about, could be written out. And we can do that. JJ worked in DC for 4 decades, former FEMA speechwriter, knows Biden, knows Trump. And like you, showed up out of the blue. You showed up 3 months ago. He showed up 6 months ago, and it was the same thing. I saw this and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then I didn't think we'd be here, but now I'm like, I don't know where this train goes, and I want to get off. And that's why I keep saying Crystal Knock. Like, this is the Crystal Knock moment. Like it's fine. Checks and balances. Calm down, Professor Evans. Checks and balances. Or, bro, he literally told the Pentagon, I want to use American cities of liberals as training grounds for the military. What do you, I mean, at this point, I'm like, if you don't see it, you don't see it, right? There's nothing I can say to you. There's nothing I can do. I can just go, it's clear to me. I think we should get out of Stuttgart. I got a cousin in Jersey. No, we're going to lose half our ownings, but we'll be alive and we can have kids and maybe we can rebuild. Bro, relax. Chill out. They haven't done a pogrom since grandpa's time. They're not really. This is modern times. We have this thing called the radio. We invented this thing called the television. We have a thing called the car. This is a modern time. This is modern Germany. Nobody has TV. We invented it. We have radio everywhere. We have the most radio advanced military in the world. We have the best freeways. We have the best cars. We're actually doing rocket science. Bro, this is a modern time. You're talking about old ideas that are in the past and old. They can never come back. All dead. Every single one of them who thought that. Not my story. That's a lesson that people of Jewish heritage have told me. And because we have many of them here in California, and I view Jewish culture as part of California culture, and I was blessed to learn that story. And I never thought it would be relevant. I never thought that would be anything more than a fun history tale. Not fun, but I love history. I love stories. Like, I thought that was just an interesting story to tell, kids, to scare them about, don't let this happen in the future. I never thought I'd be here going, what do you think you're going to do, Mark?
Well, I think the extremity of our situation is the extremity of our situation, and folks should just look to what's happening for us right now. I worry that comparisons lose people's capacity to see just what you said. A president who has said, I think we should use our military, we should do training missions with our military in U.S. cities. You don't have to look to any other country in the world or any other period of history to say, oh shit, what does that really mean? I know for, the most immediate thing I feel I can do is to join up with those efforts on October 18th to show a presence of things are not normal, things aren't right, to vote in this weird election so that we can be some extraordinary counterbalance to the Trump Texas deal to unbalance the scale of democracy. And then, to the degree possible, show up for sustained and ongoing presence in the Capitol when possible or needed. Because, wishing, I don't know. I mean, I go to work each day teaching students, and that can't be the only thing I do in weird times.
I'm not saying we do anything radical. Well, I am, but I mean, I'm for a full vote now, but that's me. But I'm also reasonable. I understand this is a scary concept. This is new, and I don't want to scare anybody. And what
Well,
I've
I
been
don't think a vote is, I mean, that's as American as anything. Or the California,
right,
I mean, look at some of the goofy things we voted. I mean, those initiatives get used for all sorts of ideas, and they're floater balloons. It's like, hey, should we do this? Somebody gets some money together, they go out and collect some signatures, they throw it on the ballot. Like you were called to do, you're leveling off of doing a very reasonable, hey, let's ask people, what do you think? I mean, what's the worst thing that happens? It loses, but you see, the percentage that vote, yeah, I think we should consider this would not be zero.
we think the time is now. We think we can get legislators on board because you don't have to back it. As a legislator, you could go, I think this is extreme and I'm not there. But my constituents will back.
I mean, half the time things go to the ballot is for that reason, because legislators don't want to put their neck on the line.
Right.
They don't want to say something and get out front of their constituents. So they utilize the ballot process so that they can get the bellwether voice of the people rather than have to be out front.
Yeah.
And so for anybody to raise the money, be it Cal Exit for this issue or for, I think green should be worn on Tuesdays. If I had enough money, I could go out and gather signatures and put it before the California people to, see if we want a law that makes folks wear green on Tuesdays. I don't think that's the best use of money or time, but this putting the question of could California be an independent nation seems a very legitimate use of time and money in this particular time.
That's it. You would just investigate. We're not doing the investigation. I mean, you theoretically could be called, but to be called with one of many people who are called. Same thing with me. It would be a panel of experts. They would investigate. And they wouldn't say yes or no. They would just go, if you were going to, this is what you'd want to do. That's the great thing about the report. It doesn't go pass, fail. It goes, so if you want to chop off your leg, here's the best way to do it. And if you don't want to chop off your leg, here's the best way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It can't tell you what to do because the legislature has to make that decision. Yeah. So I love it because it has to be neutral, right? Like the way this machine works, it can't really take a stance. It can tell you if you want to go left, this is what happens. If you want to go right, this is what happens. If you want to go south, this is what happens. And it can't say what's best because that's for the legislature to do. They very specifically avoid that. They may have a recommendation of, we think this might be best. Means nothing under the law. The legislature could completely ignore it. So you have a total pass as a politician. It doesn't make anything happen. It's educating the public. Is there anything bad or wrong about that? Given these times, is that imprudent if you're a politician and you have eyeballs and you're watching the same horror stuff that we're watching, for you to go, maybe we should look into this? I'm not saying yes. I'm just saying let's get some experts together and then they can tell me what to think. How's that wrong?
Marcus, for me, that seems like a good place to wrap things up. I'm looking at the clock. I've got to head off to another thing today.
We'll leave it here. I'm going to end the show. If you could stay on for just 30 seconds more, I'll talk to you real quick. But thank you for being here. That's the end of our show. We'll have more soon. Stay with me, Professor, for 1 second. We'll see y'all soon.